Does the thought of speaking a new language fill you with dread, and maybe even stop you from booking that trip you've always wanted to take? Learning a new language can be daunting, but there are so many tools today to help you navigate a new place with ease. Traveling prepared with some key phrases and tools will not only make your next trip less daunting, but so much more immersive and enjoyable.
Welcome to the Travel More podcast.
Each episode, we share custom itineraries, travel hacks, expert advice, and even stories of our past travel failures to help you level up your travel game.
I'm Shelly, a lover of plans, itineraries, and cheap flights. I'm an expert deal finder with one eye always on the budget.
And I'm Bruce, the improviser, ready to pick up where plans fail to turn letdowns into unexpected trip favorites. We're here to bust through barriers that stop you from making your travel dreams a reality.
So book that flight, buy the tickets, and say hello to your next adventure.
This is the Travel More Podcast.
Welcome back to the Travel More Podcast.
Welcome! We're getting to the very end of the summer school series.
I know it's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been different. I hope you guys have been enjoying kind of shorter episodes, but I think Shelly and I are excited to get back to a longer format.
We are excited. We're excited just to sit and tell stories of our amazing, cool adventure-y things.
Yeah.
And also, of course, there's always tips involved, but it does feel a little
Tip heavy?
Yeah, this one's a little tip heavy.
Well, I know we try to get through things pretty quickly,
yeah.
So it'll be nice to kind of go back. But yeah, we got 2 more episodes left.
This one and the next one.
Yeah, so this one and then one more after this. The next one coming up will be our final of our travel hack series.
Yeah, it's a good one. And we've just had so much success with travel hacking. I feel like we're so excited to talk about it because of how awesome it's been for us this summer in particular.
Also in a year where
That's
we started doing very little, and already we've had some really awesome redemptions, first class flights. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been wild, honestly. And so I think that makes us really excited to talk about it. So we are excited to do that. We'll also do a recap of our travel hacking kind of later, probably before Christmas, in our longer form episodes, where we'll talk all about how some of these amazing things came to be. But today, we're not talking travel hacking. We're talking Bruce's favorite thing, language learning.
Yeah, so definitely my favorite thing, something that I think between the two of us, I've kind of taken on over the years.
You think? Yeah.
Shelly definitely doesn't like trying to learn languages.
I just get very nervous, and Bruce, coming from a voice, singing background, has just had a lot of practice in pronunciation of things because he sang in so many different languages, and he did linguistics in college, and so I just think that he has such a better kind of mind, especially for actually pronouncing it and saying it in the way that it's supposed to be, and I just feel like a Dumbo.
Well, so if you're out there feeling like you might be more like Shelly, I have news for you. I think that there's a lot of tools today that make being prepared for travel. We're not talking about learning a full language fluently.
Right.
We're just talking about feeling comfortable and prepared when you travel.
Right. And that has gotten us a lot of cool places, which we'll talk about a little bit in this episode. But before we go too far, I do also want to mention that we have another fun listener travel story at the end of this. It comes all the way from Kat Medina over in California. So she's got a really awesome, funny, maybe not quite safe for work kind of story towards the end or the very end of the episode. So stick around for that as well, because it's a good one.
It's a good one. So yeah, language apps and just language tools in general is kind of what we're talking about today. And I have to say, the times that I've been more prepared when we visited places, it's been so much more enjoyable. Not only to navigate and see things, be able to read some stuff, but even the interactions I've had with people, as simple as just greetings or being able to order food in the language, it can go such a long way. Yeah,
and it really depends on where you're going to how much that's kind of I guess appreciated is the word. But just to give an example, when we went to Greece is a hard language to learn because it's a completely new alphabet. So props to Bruce, because I just said, how do you say thank you? And he would tell me right before. But because he learned a good amount of phrasing in Greece, which we didn't really need in Athens. Most everyone spoke English. But it was just, it's almost like a respect thing, I think, where it's
Absolutely.
I'm realizing that I'm coming to your country and I don't expect you to know my language. I'm coming to try to immerse myself in yours. I don't know. I think that there is kind of a respect, and then they recognized that when we were there and we were greeted with just the nicest, like, open arms.
Dude, it was the best. Like,
thing.
I ordered in Greek at some point for dinner, and the guy brought us ouzo shots, and there was the breakfast in the morning, and we had, like, she gave us just, like, a couple extra things. Like a coffee cake. No, I forget what it was. Something like that. Banana
like
bread.
A coffee cake, or like some oranges, maybe both. She put like whipped cream all over our stuff.
And there's an instant connection because then people open up and you get to talk to them a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're not just having this transactional tourist type, experience, which is not a bad thing. Right. Because there's been plenty of times we've traveled and we've definitely been in hotspots. And we're very lucky to be English speakers.
Because it's usually you can find some people who speak English, or at least you can kind of get by with it in most cases. Really the only one that I can think of that wasn't that way as much was in Vigo, Spain, which is a really small, well, it's not really small town, I guess, but it's not super touristy to English speakers.
Right. It's definitely a highly visited place for Spanish and Portuguese speakers.
Yeah.
But it's not like a hot spot maybe for United States or other English speaking like big populations.
Right. And it was an amazing city. Like, I would recommend it highly. But you definitely needed at least a little bit of Spanish. Neither one of us have great Spanish. But we got around by kind of just apologizing a lot and using a lot of Google Translate.
Yeah, so even in places like that, the people were super nice. In fact, it was funny because some people asked us, like, where are you from? And we're like, the U.S. And they were like, wow. And I don't know that a lot of people traveled there, which, but I have to say, like, it can be very anxiety provoking to try to do that. And after that trip especially, I felt way better about just trying to communicate with people because you realize just how far you can get.
And how nice people are.
Yeah.
Like there were so many people that helped us so much in Vigo where we were like, sorry, and we're like pointing to things in the menu and kind of asking questions and using Google Translate back and forth. And they were so nice and understanding. So
definitely.
It's just making the effort, I think. And so that's what we're talking about today is like, where can you go to kind of make that effort before you go somewhere that doesn't speak English?
Yeah, so let's break down some of my favorite language learning apps. Specifically,
yes, Bruce will take over this episode.
Yes. So specifically for travel, and I'm not going to do an extensive review of everything because, again, this is just supposed to be kind of an introduction. But I'll tell you what I've had experience with, and I think it's something you want to check out on your own. So the first one is Duolingo, which is very popular.
Yes.
I think a lot of people have check this one out maybe.
I hear them in my classroom all the time. Is that like ding, 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 and I'm like, stop, that's not what we're doing right now.
So, some thoughts on Duolingo. It was one of the first ones I tried. I think the nice thing about it is there's a good amount of languages and it's also free.
Yeah.
Now, the free version of it comes with some conditions, so it's very gamified, which is fun, but can be a little much. It's a little bit bells and whistles, and there's, like, gems you can earn. And
yeah, I don't care about any of that.
Yeah, like, Shelly's like, I don't need games to learn.
Bruce likes the gems.
I enjoyed it, but I also play a lot of video games. But anyway, I found that there's a lot of nice things about it. It's not super expensive if you wanted to buy the premium, which gives you, like, there's no more ads, and when you're actually using the app, if you make mistakes, you lose, like, a life. You can think, like, what other games this are like, right? Or apps.
Right.
So if you buy the premium, you will have infinite lives. So it just makes it so you can pretty much use it more.
Yeah.
But I think I did Greek on this one without...
Which makes the most sense, I think. Because Greek, you learn a full new alphabet. And the only thing that I found with Duolingo when I've tried to use it for, like, Spanish, say, is it gives you some real random kind of phrases. It'll be like, my brother has an apple.
Right.
And you're like, I don't need to know this. Like, can you just tell me, like, how to order something in Spanish? So that's, like, the only thing I think with Duolingo is, like, it also focuses a lot, I think, on, like, reading and writing, which we don't...
Grammar.
And grammar. And you don't need that as much because you can use Google Translate, like, for menus and signage and all those types of things. Like, I just need to be able to talk to somebody. And Duolingo only does okay, in my opinion, for that.
So yeah, to sum it up, I think Duo is nice for some things, especially if you have a new alphabet.
Yeah.
But I think there are some better ones out there that I've tried for travel specifically, again, like Shelly was saying, because I felt like a lot of the drilling I was doing, like the phrases they were giving me, I didn't really use.
Yeah, although I think it was the only one that had Swahili that we looked at.
That's true.
So it has a lot.
And there's no limit on the languages you can actively be learning, so you can kind of jump around and you don't have to pay anymore, right?
It's good for you. That takes like 3 international trips to 3 like different parts of the world, so you're like constantly learning 3 different languages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's Duo. So the next one that I tried is called Babbel, which this one it's got more like realistic kind of pronunciations. There's videos. It's a little cleaner and more streamlined, a little more minimalist in its design than Duo, which is super like gamified. And Babbel does feel a little bit more like a traditional class for learning a language.
Yeah.
They actually also have like live classes. I believe it's a separate cost. So there's a couple different ways you subscribe to Babbel. There's different levels of subscriptions. They offer like 1, 3, 6, and 12 month. So there's a lot of varieties. It is a little bit more expensive than Duo, especially if you can just do Duo for free.
Right.
But I do think there's some benefits to checking out Babbel because of those live classes.
Yeah, like if you were like, you knew you wanted to spend some time in South America or Mexico or something, and so like you wanted to learn Spanish, like specifically, and really dive deep and do like a culturally immersive kind of language trip, and so like really Spanish language was your like goal. I think this Babbel actually might be better because you can really dive deep into it.
Right.
But it's not necessarily like I'm just going somewhere, I'm going to France, to Paris, I just need some phrases. Babbel may not be the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So it depends on what your goals, I guess, are, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all of these kind of have strengths.
Yeah.
A lot of them share similar things. Like, you're going to find there's similar practices.
Yeah.
Right? So you're, like, matching, you're listening, you might be pronouncing, and they often have, like, it'll listen to you pronounce it and tell you if you're correct, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the next one I was going to say is actually kind of one of my favorites right now.
Yeah.
And I like it better than Babbel. And I actually think it's probably the best app for learning and preparing to speak casually in the country.
I really liked it too.
Yeah, so it's called Memrise. It's a bit newer than Duo or Babbel.
Yeah.
I like it because immediately you jump in. Its focus is about how many words you're learning and phrases a day. And that's kind of like you set your pace based off that. So another thing with these ones, they kind of say, how much time do you want to spend? What's your goal? And they try to motivate you, and you can set notifications. Memrise focuses on phrases and words immediately. And you can either follow their recommendation for like a path of learning, or you can jump in. So I was like, oh, I want to look at checking into a hotel.
Right.
And then they immediately give you real videos of local speakers in their accent speaking how they normally would speak. And this blew my mind because usually when I hear Duo and it's like, I feel like I'm back in like high school or something.
Right. It's like, hola.
Yeah, it's
and
like, como está?
Right, like no one says it like that.
Yeah, like, it's like, it's textbook.
Right.
It's
but
very clean.
It is, like with the Memrise thing, that is, I think, the very nicest thing is because you're hearing them say it like they would normally say, like we're speaking English right now. You'd hear it just as like a native speaker, and then you like start to pick up like, oh, I can hear that when they say it.
Yes, because the first thing when you start learning a language, I always look at it like ear training for music in some ways.
Right,
like,
that's what I'm saying. That's why you're good at it.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like you think, or maybe it's like anything else. You never drank wine before and you don't really know the difference between them. You have to start experiencing them to develop a palate. I think hearing languages are very similar. So Memrise is nice because it immediately jumps you in. I was a little daunted at first because I tried Norwegian with this and it was very hard for me to hear anything happening. But it does give you the textbook pronunciation. You could swap between that and the real video.
So if you just needed like to hear it a few times, like very, very clear, and then try to hear somebody speak it, that's kind of cool. I didn't do that part.
It is cool. Yeah. And another cool feature they have is an AI chat feature called Membot that you can interact with real scenarios and either type or speak to text your responses, and the bot responds back. So
see, that's like a cool way to do AI, I think.
Oh yeah, it's
like,
really
that's
cool.
Really cool.
Well, I gotta tell you, every time I've done something like this, Shelly always sees me like freak out a little bit. Like even so, I've studied German a lot in school, but I don't really speak it a lot because I don't engage with people speaking it.
Right.
So when we go to Germany, she's always like, all right, now's your time to shine. And I'm like, I hear people, I'll say something, and then people will speak back to me so quickly and in their accent of local whatever.
Yeah,
and
the
I'm
native
just like,
speaker, yeah.
I get lost so quickly. And doing this with Memrise is almost like the real deal. Like when you go up to someone and you're like...
actually having a conversation.
Right. Or you think about in your own native language, how many ways can you order food in English?
Yeah.
But when you learn a textbook way in a certain language, it's almost like no one does it that way.
It's like, may I have a glass of water, please?
Yeah, and it's
and
like
no
hey, can I get water? Right.
Right,
like,
and then all of a sudden it's like, what? Like, that's not what I learned.
Right, and then you feel stupid.
Right.
Because you're like, I guess I didn't learn anything before this trip.
Yeah.
But it's the reality of like, by the time we were down in Norway, I knew exactly what they said, at the cash register, and I knew they were asking if you want a bag and if you're going to pay with card. So it's just one of those things that Memrise kind of adds that real life aspect of practice that I really like. So
the only thing about Memrise is they did give us this is not sponsored in any way by Memrise, but they did give us a free trial type membership just to see what the paid version was. So I'm not actually sure what the unpaid version of it looks like.
So I think I forgot to mention that for Babbel and for this one. Oh man, I don't know if I wrote that down, what the free version was. I usually, for both of these, I think they let you have the intro level. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure Babbel and Memrise gives you the first lesson. But I don't think you get access to everything else, or maybe even the Membot thing, unless you get a subscription. But I'd have to double check that.
Okay. Yeah, I just... that's the only thing is we haven't experienced the free version, I guess, because we just jumped right into the paid version. But if you're going somewhere, honestly, if it were me and I didn't have my language extraordinaire Bruce with me and I just needed a couple of phrases or I really wanted to just feel like I could hear it, honestly, I think I'd go with the Memrise even if it was a couple bucks a month.
Yeah, that's the thing, because honestly, when you look at these, it's not even that much for a couple months or even just to try it out for a month. I think it's worth it.
Well, Babbel's the most expensive for just 1 month. It's almost $20 if you just do 1 month.
They do run deals a lot. So I think right now Babbel is about $17.99.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times I see deals, and even Labor Day weekend, I bet if you check it out, they often will have deals for longer, and it's significantly almost half the price sometimes.
Yeah.
So check it out. So some other apps just to name really quick that have been around that I'm interested in checking out. Rosetta Stone, it's been around forever. Definitely one of the oldest language learning. There's an app, but those are more traditional lessons, 30-minute lessons.
To me, that goes back to kind of Babbel, where it's if you are actually very invested in learning this language, then that's the kind of thing I would get to learn it. If you're I want to learn Italian, I would get Babbel or Rosetta Stone to actually learn it, as opposed to I need a couple of phrases before I go on my trip.
Right, and some others that might be cool that I've been looking into. One's called Drops, and it's really visual, and it's also gamified. And then there's another one called Mondly, which has a version specifically for kids, and I think is used in schools. It has a VR version too. It's kind of cool. Another one is called Lyrica, which you learn by listening to songs.
It's cool.
There's another one called, I think you say it, Primsler, which is named after the doctor or the doctorate level PhD who developed it. They're podcast style. So if you want to listen in the car, maybe check that one out.
Yeah, I'll link all these in our show notes just in case you're sitting at home. You're what are the ones that they just said? I'll put all the links.
Yeah, check them out. They're all different ones. And some other tools that you might check out if you're watching Netflix and you're binging a show, you can actually check out their language learning. I guess it's that's not an app, it's within it, but it's a Chrome extension, I believe, and it gives you 2 sets of subtitles, which is kind of cool, so you can practice and listen. So those are all different things you could check out.
I think I did that in school.
Really?
I just feel I watched Happy class? Feet or something, and they put it in Spanish and then put English subtitles. You pair it. Right.
So this does both. I think you're listening to it in Spanish, let's say, and you're seeing English and Spanish subtitles.
How can you possibly read 2 things at once, though?
Well, I think it's a little practice. It's paired next to each other.
Okay. I'd have to look at that
one.
That one makes me feel my head would hurt after 10 minutes.
You feel you're in class. You're
yeah, I was I cannot watch this TV show.
So the last kind of tool I want to talk about that I think everybody should just use all the time is Google Translate.
Oh, yeah, Google Translate. If you don't have that app on your phone and you're going somewhere where they don't speak the language, your native language, you should download that immediately.
Oh my gosh.
It is free.
Yes.
You can look anything that's written. You can translate mostly in real time, and even if you can't translate it in real time, it literally you put your camera up and it will translate it on the camera.
It's magical
on the screen. It's crazy.
It's incredible.
Even if it doesn't do that, you can take a picture of it and it will translate it like that. It was, it's wild.
It's game changing, to be honest. It's almost science fiction to me, because there's even a version of it that you can turn on a microphone and someone can speak into it. It will translate it back to you. Then you can turn on the microphone and speak English, and it translates back and forth. It's literally a Babelfish, essentially.
Right. So that's wild. Honestly, that gets us a lot. That gets us really far because we use it on every menu ever.
Yeah, so
we take
super
a picture
helpful.
of every single menu.
Well, and that's why I think Memrise is great for conversational, because I don't need to read and write it if I have the Google Translate app. So
yeah, if you take nothing else from this, go download the Google Translate app on your phone because it's magical and it's free.
And speaking of learning languages, we have a fun story today to kind of cap off and end the episode, brought to you by the author of The Joys of Jet Lag, Kat Medina.
So I read this book over the summer, and I just thought it was like fun, witty, and had some great tips on how to bring your vacation self back to real life, which I can definitely use some tips on that.
Definitely.
And it did get, even if it got like a little PG-13 at times, I definitely thought it was a really fun read. Especially while on vacation, because you're like, yes, I want to feel like this all the time. So this story is no different. It does get into PG-13 just the tiniest bit. So if you have very young ears around you, you may want to listen to this part a little later. But we love the story and can't wait for you to hear it. So here is Kat Medina.
Hi, Bruce and Shelley. Kat Medina here. So I wanted to share with you a crazy travel story, but it's not necessarily crazy in the sense of it being dangerous or scary. So years ago, I lived in Ecuador for a few months, and I went to learn Spanish and get to know the culture, and I rented a room from this amazing couple. They were probably my grandparents' age, and, over the time that I spent with them, we got close, and for the husband's birthday, he was turning 80, and they decided to throw a big party with all of his family and friends. And while I was there, I was sitting at a table with an elderly man who I'd never met before, who was probably mid-80s. And first off, you have to keep in mind, where I was living in Ecuador, it was not necessarily a touristy town. It was small, and if I wanted to communicate with people, it had to be in Spanish because not many people there spoke English. So while I was sitting at that table, there was a picture of a drink called chicha, which is an Ecuadorian traditional beverage, usually only served on special occasions. And the elderly man I was sitting with pointed to the picture and said, "Have you had this before? Do you know what this is? Do you want to try it?" All in Spanish. And I had. So I replied, "Yes, I love chichis. They're delicious. I'll have some." And he looked at me with an odd expression on his face, kind of embarrassed and also holding back a laugh. And I ended up pouring myself some and him some. And I didn't really think anything of it. I just figured, oh, okay, maybe I made a grammatical error or my accent's weird or something. And later that evening, I was just reflecting on the day and I realized I didn't say chicha. I said chichis. And in Spanish, in Ecuador, that means boobs. So I basically told this 85-year-old man who I'd never met before, I love boobs. They're delicious, when he asked me if I had tried this traditional Ecuadorian beverage. And when I think about this, it's just a part of travel and a part of learning languages. Mistakes happen, and the sooner you can accept them and find the humor in them, the sooner it becomes just a really fun story that you enjoy telling. And I will say that I will never forget the difference between chichis and chicha. All right, happy travels.
If you liked your story, you'll probably love her book, and you can get the link to her book in the show notes. We'll see you next time.
Bye! Did you know that every time you book a Disney or Universal vacation, you're paying for a service that you may not even be using?
Really?
That's right. Travel agent costs are added to your Disney or Universal vacation, whether you use one or not.
So you're telling me that I'm paying for something even though I'm not getting the help?
You got it. So next time you want to book a theme park vacation, make your money work for you. By booking with Magic Pass Travel, you'll get our expertise and years of experience without paying any extra and while supporting a small business.
Check out our show notes to find our contact information.
Can't wait to help you plan your next adventure.